All right, we've talked about renin, we've talked about angiotensin. Let's talk about aldosterone now. Aldosterone is the final hormone that gets your... All right, we've talked about renin, we've talked about angiotensin. Let's talk about aldosterone now. Aldosterone is the final hormone that gets your blood pressure to go up. And so, where does it come from? Aldosterone comes from a gland. I'm going to draw it here. And the gland is actually called the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland. And this gland sits, literally sits right on top of the kidney. And so let me draw the kidney here for you, so you can kind of orient yourself to where this gland would be sitting. And of course you have two kidneys and you have two adrenal glands. You have the left and the right. And if you were to look inside of the adrenal gland, you'd notice that actually in the middle of the adrenal gland is an area that looks different than the outside. And we call that the medulla. The inside is the medulla. And the outer bit is the cortex. And they make different... different hormones. This cortex is actually the part of the adrenal gland that makes the aldosterone. So let me draw some cortex cells here for you. And in the middle is a blood vessel kind of running through. I'll draw that in just a moment. So these cortex cells are basically like any other cells. They need food, they need nutrients, they need oxygen, and so these capillaries that are running through are going to provide all of that to these cortex cells. And if you were to take a little microscope and let's say look deep within these cells, maybe not even with a microscope, but let's say you were able to look deep within these cells, you'd notice that there's cholesterol in these cells. So there's cholesterol sitting inside of these cells. Actually not visible, but it is there. And the cholesterol, I've always wondered, what is the point of cholesterol? It always seems like it's a bad thing. This cholesterol is actually really useful to these cells because it helps them make the hormone aldosterone. Actually, aldosterone comes from cholesterol, and if you put the molecules next to each other, you'll see how similar they are. They actually look really, really similar. So these cells are the ones making aldosterone. But of course, you can't just make aldosterone willy-nilly. You have to wait for the right moment, right? So When does that cell know to make aldosterone? What are the triggers? Well, there are a couple of triggers. One would be if you see, or if those cells encounter angiotensin 2. So if angiotensin 2 comes around, that would be one of the triggers to let the cholesterol turn into aldosterone. Angiotensin 2, you remember, is floating through the body. It's actually quite a journey of its own, making its way from the liver initially and all the way into meeting renin and then meeting angiotensin converting enzyme. So this angiotensin 2 has been around a long time, and it finally makes its way to the cortex of the adrenal gland, and it is one of two stimulus for making aldosterone. And the other stimulus is actually not a hormone, but it's actually the ion potassium. So, blood has a lot of sodium in it, but it also has a little bit of potassium in it. And if those potassium levels start creeping up, if you have a little bit too much potassium, then that is a stimulus for getting some aldosterone out there in the blood. So these are the two triggers for getting cholesterol into aldosterone. So just keep that in mind. And let's actually now make a little space on our canvas and see exactly where the aldosterone works and how it works. So let me scroll down and let's go back. Let's think back to our blood vessel that enters the kidney. And we know that we call that the afferent arteriole, and it goes into the glomerulus, which is that little clump of blood vessels I just drew there. And the afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole, this is all review now, right, are in the kidney. These are the blood vessels that have entered, and the efferent arteriole is exiting the glomerulus of the kidney. And you remember, this is our little kidney nephron, the Bowman's capsule and the proximal convoluted tubule. And we have that loop of Henle, and we have that distal convoluted tubule that goes like that, and then it all kind of comes together in the collecting duct. So this is the nephron, right? This is our image of the nephron. And now to answer the question of where does aldosterone work, I needed to draw this because I wanted to show you that it actually works in this area that I'm circling in blue. So this is kind of the area that the aldosterone is working on. And right here, this part right here, is the late part of, we've talked about renin, we've talked about angiotensin, let's talk about aldosterone now. aldosterone is the final hormone that gets your blood pressure to go up. And so, where does it come from? Aldosterone comes from a gland. I'm going to draw it here. And the gland is actually called the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland. And this gland literally sits right on top of the kidney. And so let me draw the kidney here for you, so you can kind of orient yourself to where this gland would be sitting. And of course you have two kidneys and you have two adrenal glands. You have the left and the right. And if you were to look inside of the adrenal gland, you'd notice that actually in the middle of the adrenal gland is an area that looks different than the outside. And we call that the medulla. The inside is the medulla, and the outer bit is the cortex. And they make different hormones, and this cortex is actually the part of the adrenal gland that makes the aldosterone. So let me draw some cortex cells here for you. And in the middle is a blood vessel kind of running through. I'll draw that in just a moment. So these cortex cells are basically like any other cells. They need food, they need nutrients, they need oxygen. And so these capillaries that are running through are going to provide all of that to these cortex cells. And if you were to take a little microscope and let's say look deep within these cells, maybe not even with a microscope, but let's say you're able to look deep within these cells, you'd notice that there's cholesterol in these cells. So there's cholesterol sitting inside of these cells, actually not visible, but it is there. And the cholesterol, I've always wondered, what is the point of cholesterol? It always seems like it's a bad thing. This cholesterol is actually... Alright, we've talked about renin, we've talked about angiotensin, let's talk about aldosterone now. Aldosterone is the final hormone that gets your blood pressure to go up. And so, where does it come from? Aldosterone comes from a gland, I'm going to draw it here, and the gland is actually called the adrenal gland. And this gland literally sits right on top of the kidney. And so let me draw the kidney here for you, so you can kind of orient yourself to where this gland would be sitting. And of course you have two kidneys and you have two adrenal glands. You have the left and the right. And if you were to look inside of the adrenal gland, you'd notice that actually in the middle of the adrenal gland is an area that looks different than the outside. And we call that the medulla. The inside is the medulla, and the outer bit is the cortex. And they make different hormones, and this cortex is actually the part of the adrenal gland that makes the aldosterone. So let me draw some cortex cells here for you. And in the middle is a blood vessel kind of running through. I'll draw that in just a moment. So these cortex cells are basically like any other cells. They need food, they need nutrients, they need oxygen. And so these capillaries that are running through are going to provide all that to these cortex cells. And if you were to take a little microscope and say, look deep within these cells, maybe not even with a microscope, but let's say you're able to look deep within these cells, you'd notice that there's cholesterol in these cells. So there's cholesterol sitting inside of these cells, actually not visible, but it is there. And the cholesterol, I've always wondered, what is the point of cholesterol? It always seems like it's a bad thing. This cholesterol is actually really useful to these cells because it helps them make the hormone aldosterone. Actually, aldosterone comes from cholesterol. If you put the molecules next to each other, you'll see how similar they are. Actually look really, really similar. So these cells are the ones making aldosterone. But of course, you can't just make aldosterone willy-nilly. You have to wait for the right moment, right? So when does that cell know to make aldosterone? What are the triggers? Well, there are a couple triggers. One would be if you see, or if those cells encounter angiotensin 2. So if angiotensin 2 comes around, that would be one of the triggers to let the cholesterol turn into aldosterone. Angiotensin 2, you remember, is floating through the body. It's actually quite a journey of its own, making its way from the liver initially and all the way into meeting renin and then meeting angiotensin converting enzyme. So this angiotensin 2 has been around a long time. It finally makes its way to the cortex of the adrenal gland, and it is one of two stimulus for making aldosterone. And the other stimulus is actually not a hormone, but it's actually the ion potassium. So, blood has a lot of sodium in it, but it also has a little bit of potassium in it. And if those potassium levels start creeping up, if you have a little bit too much potassium, then that is a stimulus for getting some aldosterone out there in the blood. So these are the two triggers for getting cholesterol into aldosterone. So just keep that in mind. And let's actually now make a little space on our canvas and see exactly. Actually, aldosterone comes from cholesterol. If you put the molecules next to each other, you'll see how. So these cortex cells are basically. Like any other cells, they need food, they need nutrients, they need oxygen. And so these capillaries that are running through are going to provide all that to these cortex cells. And if you were to take a little microscope and let's say look deep within these cells, maybe not even with a microscope, but let's say it's actually the part of the adrenal gland that makes the aldosterone. So let me draw some cortex cells here for you. And in the middle is a blood vessel kind of running through. I'll draw that in just a moment. So these cortex cells are basically like any other cells. They need food, they need nutrients, they need oxygen. And so these capillaries that are running through are going to provide all that to these cortex cells. And if you were to take a little microscope and let's say look deep within these cells, maybe not even with a microscope, but let's say you're able to look deep within these cells, you'd notice that there's cholesterol in these cells. So there's cholesterol sitting inside of these cells, actually not visible, but it is there. And the cholesterol, I've always wondered, what is the point of cholesterol? It always seems like it's a bad thing. This cholesterol is actually really useful to these cells because it helps them make the hormone aldosterone. Actually, aldosterone comes from cholesterol. If you put the molecules next to each other, you'll see how similar they are. Actually look really, really similar. So these cells are the ones making aldosterone. But of course, you can't just make aldosterone willy-nilly. You have to wait for the right moment, right? So when does that cell know to make aldosterone? What are the triggers? Well, there are a couple triggers. One would be if you see, or if those cells encounter angiotensin 2. So if angiotensin 2 comes around, that would be one of the triggers to let the cholesterol turn into aldosterone. Angiotensin 2, you remember, is floating through the body. It's actually quite a journey of its own, making its way from the liver initially and all the way into, meeting renin and then meeting angiotensin converting enzyme. So this angiotensin 2 has been around a long time, and it finally makes its way to the cortex of the adrenal gland, and it is one of two stimulus for making aldosterone. And the other stimulus is actually not a hormone, but it's actually the ion potassium. So, blood has a lot of sodium in it, but it also has a little bit of potassium in it, and if those potassium levels start creeping up, if you have a little bit too much potassium, then that is a stimulus for getting some aldosterone out there in the blood. So these are the two triggers for getting cholesterol into aldosterone. So just keep that in mind, and let's actually now make a little space on our canvas and see exactly where the aldosterone works and how it works. Sing and cholesterol in these capillaries. So these cortex cells here, and they make air to adrenal looks, and this, they need food, they need to take a little microscope cells. So there's cholesterol. It always seems like it's sitting inside of these cells. Actually not visible, but it is there. And the cholesterol, I've always wondered, what is the point of cholesterol? It always seems like it's a bad thing. This cholesterol is actually really useful to these cells because it helps them make the hormone aldosterone. Actually, aldosterone comes from cholesterol. If you put the molecules next to each other, you'll see how similar they are. They look really, really similar. So these cells are the ones know to potassium aldosterones, afferent arterial down, and make a little space on our canvas and two articles I just drew there. And the afferent arterial and efferent arterial, this is all review now, right, are in the kidney. These are the blood vessels that have entered, and the efferent arterial is exiting the glomerulus of the kidney. And remember, this is our little kidney nephron, Bowman's capsule, and the proximal convoluted tubule. Then we have that loop of Henle, and we have that distal convoluted tubule that goes like that, and then it all kind of comes together in the collecting duct. So this is the nephron, right? This is our image of the nephron. And now to answer the question of where does aldosterone work, I needed to draw this because I want to show you that it actually works in this area that I'm circling in blue. So this is kind of the area that the aldosterone is working on. And right here, this part right here, is the late part of the distal, so I'll call it the late distal convoluted tubule. And the other part that it works on right here is the collecting duct. So these are the two areas that the aldosterone is actually going to have an effect on. So it's going to affect the kidneys. That's actually going to also affect the gut, but I'm not going to get into that too much detail because the main effect of aldosterone is on the kidney. And so let's try to blow up some of these areas so you can see exactly what I mean. Let me draw a cell here. Here's one cell, and just imagine that you've got another cell there, another cell there, and you've got, let's say, a few cells there, and they're lining the nephron, right? They're lining, let's say, the distal convoluted tubule or the collecting duct, and these are called principal cells. Principal cells, and it's actually spelled the way that principal at a school would be called or spelled. So this is a principal cell, and on the other side of it, over here, you've got blood flowing. And you remember we talked about the peritubular capillaries. Peritubular capillaries. Well, this is where it comes into play. Peritubular capillary is actually sitting next to the principal cell, and blood is flowing through here. Blood is flowing through, and of course, this is filtrate, or what will soon be urine, is flowing through here. So we've got blood and urine flowing through, and we've got a couple of surfaces here, right? So we've got one surface here, and this is called the basolateral surface. And this becomes really important because the surfaces are where ions are going to be dancing back and forth. This is the other surface, is the apical surface. Apical surface. So this is the surface between the principal cell and the filtrate, or the urine. Okay, so we've got a couple surfaces, we've got a cell, and we've got some blood and urine. And now you remember that most of the inside of these cells is going to be a couple surfaces, the end of these are centers working on. And right here, this part right here, is the late part of the part that it works on, the kidneys. Let's try to build one cell in just this area so you can see exactly what I mean. Let me draw a cell here. Here's one cell, and just imagine that you've got another cell there, and you've got, let's say, a few cells there, and they're lining the nephron, right? They're lining, let's say, the distal convoluted tubule or the collecting duct, and these are called principal cells. Principal cells, and it's actually spelled the way that principal at a school would be called or spelled. So this is the principal cell, and on the other side of it, over here, you've got blood flowing. And you remember we talked about the peritubular capillaries. Peritubular capillaries. Well, this is where it comes into play. Peritubular capillary is actually sitting next to the principal cell, and blood is flowing through here. Blood is flowing through, and of course, this is filtrate, or what will soon be urine, is flowing through here. So we've got blood and urine flowing through, and we've got a couple of surfaces here, right? So we've got one surface here, and this is called the basolateral surface. And this becomes really important because the surfaces are where ions are going to be dancing back and forth. This is the other surface, is the apical surface. Apical surface. So this is the surface between the principal cell and the filtrate, or the urine. Okay, so we've got a couple surfaces, we've got a cell, and we've got some blood and urine. And now you remember that most of the inside of these cells is going to be loaded with potassium, right? So there's a lot of potassium in here. And if this is another principal cell, there's more potassium in here. And blood is going to have a lot of sodium. So let me draw sodium over here. So a lot of sodium in the blood, that's the main solute, and a lot of potassium in the cells. And now these aren't the only ions in the blood or in the cells. These are the main ion in the blood and cells. So just keep that in mind. They're not the only ones, but they are the dominant ones. And so what happens is that the cells want to maintain this gradient, right? This is always the case. They always try to maintain this gradient, and they have this wonderful sodium-potassium pump to do it, right? They have this pump that basically gets 2 potassiums over here, and it squeezes 3 sodiums out over here, right? So we have this sodium-potassium pump. 3 sodiums. And this pump does not come for free, right? Because it takes energy to get things to go in a direction they don't want to go. So this is actually going to take ATP to drive that pump. So now, so far I haven't actually mentioned aldosterone. Where does aldosterone work? Where we know it works in the principal cell, but what does it do in the cell exactly? Well, it does 3 things, okay? So 3 things. One, I'm going to write it really clearly, is that it drives that sodium-potassium pump to work harder. Okay, so it basically is going to get even more potassium in the cell and even more sodium over into the blood. So far, so good, right? Second thing it does is it puts in little potassium channels here. Well, that's interesting because we know that the cell's got a lot of potassium in it already, right? So if you have a potassium channel, if that's the second thing that aldosterone does, number two, what do you think is going to happen with that potassium in the cell? Where's it going to go? Well, it's going to see that channel, and it's going to say, well, I'm out of here. I'm going to go into that urine because there's a lot of potassium in the cell already, and it wants to get over to a place where there's less of it. So it's going to go over to the urine side. So potassium's going to leave the cell. Well, that makes it easier for that pump to work harder because now it's going to squeeze even more potassium into the cell, right? This is going to work even harder to get potassium in there because this potassium is leaving and getting into the urine. So really, at the end of the day, what happens is that the blood, I'm going to write it over here, kind of the net effect, the blood is going to, one, it's going to lose potassium, right? Aldosterone is going to make the blood lose potassium. And that makes perfect sense because keep in mind, one of the triggers for aldosterone was high potassium. So this is a perfect kind of system to now lower your potassium. It's a nice little loop they've created, right? More potassium, no problem, make some aldosterone, and aldosterone is going to help you lose some of that potassium. Okay, now going back to aldosterone, what's another thing that it does? Well, it does this. It puts in little sodium channels. This is the third thing that it does. Now, if you have a little sodium channel, let's try to think through what would happen. Sodium is going to make its way into the cell, right? Because it's going to say, well, there's not much sodium in there, so I might move into the cell. So sodium gets into the cell. And then again, that sodium-potassium pump says, aha, sodium in the cell? Great, let's pump it into the blood. So it's actually going to move from the cell over into the blood, and that ATP is going to be used up. So it definitely takes energy to do this. But at the end of the day, you're going to move sodium from the urine, what would have been urine, to the blood. So another effect, another key effect, is gain of sodium. Gain of sodium in the blood, right? And think through this. Now, if I said at the beginning that the main solute in blood is sodium, right? That's the main way that it's attracting water through osmosis. And now you have more of it, you have more sodium. Well, then water is going to also get pulled into the blood, right? It's going to get pulled into the blood as well. And so this is the other key thing that happens. You gain sodium and water. And this is important because, remember, the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, the whole point of it was to raise your blood pressure. Well, now you can see how it actually works. It's because the aldosterone is going to pull in more sodium into the blood, and then water is going to follow. And all of this stuff is going to lead to increased volume or increased stroke volume. And remember, stroke volume relates back to blood pressure, and therefore blood pressure. So this is how aldosterone works. It allows you to drop your potassium. It allows you to raise your sodium. The sodium pulls in some water, and the water helps you raise your blood pressure because of extra volume, extra stroke volume. So let's pause right there. We'll pick up with some more stuff that aldosterone does in the next video. So in our last video, we left off here talking about aldosterone and how it works on the principal cell. And there, kind of the two big ideas were losing potassium and gaining salt and water. So that was how it worked on the principal cell. And aldosterone actually works on one other type of cell and has an important job there as well. So let me actually just make a little bit of space on our canvas, and I'll start talking about the second type of cell. Oops. That is the alpha intercalated cell. So I'm going to draw it in yellow here. And this is our alpha intercalated cell. And the main job of the alpha intercalated cell is to get rid of protons. Intercalated cell. And you remember that protons are basically our way of representing acid. And if there's an alpha intercalated cell, you can probably guess that there's somewhere along the line there's also a beta intercalated cell. And the beta intercalated cell does, in many ways, the opposite of the alpha one, and the beta cell tries to hold on to acid. So here we're going to talk about how the blood, or body rather, gets rid of acid, And in the beta cells, in a future video, we'll talk about how it holds on to acid. So here's a blood vessel, as before. This is our peritubular capillary, and it's running alongside of our cell. And blood is going to be, in this case, a little too acidic. So actually, let me move this down just a touch so I can show you. There we go. So in this case, we're going to have, again, the basolateral surface, lateral surface, and this is the apical surface, right? So we have our two surfaces, and just to get you visually oriented, I want to make sure I just draw another cell right here, just so you remember that this is basically where the urine is kind of collecting. Oop, made it too small. So urine is collecting on this side right here, and we obviously have blood on the other side. And in our case, let's imagine that this blood is getting a little too acidic, more acidic than we would like. So I'm going to draw little protons here, and there are too many of them, right? So it's a little too acidic, too many protons. And our goal, our blood would love to get rid of some of these, right? We would love to get rid of some of these protons so that the blood is less acidic. And so here comes into play the alpha intercalated cell. Now, all cells are making carbon dioxide and water. And I say making because we're breaking down sugar, right? And sugar at the very core is, or at the very end of the process, is going to be turned into carbon dioxide. Here comes into play the alpha intercalated cell. Now, all cells are making carbon dioxide and water. And I say making because we're breaking down sugar, right? And sugar at the very core is, or at the very end of the process, is going to be turned into carbon dioxide and water. So all cells are making carbon dioxide and water. And when these molecules within the cell meet up, there's an enzyme here in the alpha intercalated cell called carbonic anhydrase. And what this does is it helps the carbon dioxide and water form into protons and bicarb. So this is bicarbonate, HCO3 minus. And if you actually count it up, it all adds up. The carbon ends up over with the bicarb, and the oxygens all end up on the bicarb. And you're left with just one lonely little proton over here, and bicarb. So the bicarb, I would love if I could somehow get that bicarb over to the blood. That would be fantastic, right? Because then you can neutralize one of those little protons. So there happens to be a little transporter in the basolateral surface. There's a little transporter, and it basically sends across this bicarb over here. So this bicarb ends up on this side. And in exchange for doing that, I would love if I could somehow all end up on the bicarb, and you're left with just one lonely little proton over here, and bicarb. So the bicarb, I would love if I could somehow get that bicarb over to the blood. That would be fantastic, right? Because then you can neutralize one of those little protons. So there happens to be a little transporter in the basolateral surface. There's a little transporter, and it basically sends across this bicarb over here. So this bicarb ends up on this side. And in exchange for doing that, it takes on a chloride. Okay, no big deal. So it takes on a chloride, and now that chloride is sitting on the inside. We'll come back to that chloride in just a second. That bicarbonate, because this is where kind of the magic is happening, that bicarbonate is going to bind to that proton, and they will do the reverse. They're actually going to go back to water and carbon dioxide, right? So they're actually going to go back to water and carbon dioxide. And what have I really accomplished here? Well, I'm no longer left with any bicarb in the blood. That's fine. But here's the cool thing. I've actually gotten rid of a proton, right? Because I have water there and I have carbon dioxide there. And this will get, at some point I can breathe that out. And water is water, so that's great. And so I've basically accomplished something really cool. I've gotten rid of a proton, and I've gotten some water, and I've gotten carbon dioxide, which I can breathe out through the lungs at some point when the blood gets over there. So this is actually fantastic for the blood because I've been able to get rid of some of that acid, which is the whole goal. Now, if you think about it, I've been left with a couple things. I've got that chloride, which I said I would get back to. So let's deal with that right now. Happens to be a little channel for chloride, so chloride can just make its way over to the blood. Well, that's very convenient, right? So you can keep doing this process, and that keeps it nice and tidy. But you're still stuck with a proton. I still got this proton. I got to figure out what to do with this proton. So this proton is going to build up, right? If I keep doing this process, let's say I keep driving this process, I'm going to get lots and lots of little protons, right? I mean, I can see how the bicarb is going to help overall eventually cancel all these protons out, but I'm going to keep building up protons over here, right? So for every proton I get rid of in the blood, I build up a proton in my cell. So at the end of the day, I've got to figure out how to get rid of these protons from the cell. Okay, so here's where aldosterone comes into play. We have these really nifty little transporters, and they do cost energy, so they're not free of charge. They're going to take energy. Let me draw that in right now so I don't forget. They're going to take energy, ATP, to get this transporter to work. But what they'll do is they'll basically send a little proton over into the urine, and you can just urinate that out. So your urine will be a little bit more acidic, sure, but that's actually quite helpful because I'd rather have urine that's acidic and then just flush the toilet, get rid of it, rather than having blood that's acidic, because that's a problem. So that's one thing that, or one transporter that will get the proton across. And actually, this transporter is going to be driven. It's actually going to be working almost like overdrive when aldosterone is around. So now finally we've gotten to what aldosterone does in these cells. It makes that transporter work really, really well. So you can get rid of protons. And if you can get rid of protons, then this whole process is going to work really nicely. Now, there's actually another transporter that gets rid of protons, and I'll draw that right here. And this one is actually not going to take energy. You're thinking, well, how do you get rid of protons and not even take energy? Well, I'm going to first draw the proton kind of going across. And it took energy the first time around, but here we're actually going to use something different. We're going to use a gradient. So you remember these cells, actually let me draw it here. These cells have a lot of potassium, right? But not too much salt, not too much salt. In fact, all the salt is sitting in the blood, right? So I'll draw the salt sitting over here. A lot of salt sitting over here in the blood, because that's the main ion for the blood. Now, there isn't much salt over there in the cell, and so you can actually allow salt in. You'll say, all right, we'll take a salt molecule in, and because salt wants to get in so badly, it actually will drive this transporter and will allow proton to slip out into the urine. So you're basically, instead of using energy, you're using a gradient. And this second transporter is also going to be revved up by aldosterone. So aldosterone is really working on these two transporters and is going to help you get rid of protons. Now, there actually happens to be a couple of other transporters that are important. I'm just going to draw them in here. So there's another one, and this one also takes energy. And let me draw in the energy so we don't forget that, because that's always important. This one takes energy. And this one is going to, again, allow protons out, because that is the whole point of all this, is to try to get protons out of these cells so that we can keep using them, so that alpha-intercalated cell doesn't become just a bag of acid. And instead of sodium coming back with it, this time you're actually going to use potassium. Potassium can come back. But now immediately you can say, well, there's a problem here. Potassium wouldn't want to be in the cell. I mean, there's a lot of potassium already there. And that is why this one takes energy. So you can already see why this transporter takes energy, whereas the one with sodium does not, because potassium doesn't want to be in the cell. It's actually forced to be in the cell. And actually, that brings up my last point, which is that you remember we talked about in the principal cells, and in fact in all cells we have these sodium-potassium pumps. that are on this basolateral surface. Remember we talked about that? Well, in the alpha-intercalated cell, it's no different. It also has to maintain this sodium-potassium gradient, so it's going to drive potassium in. It's going to take 2 potassiums in, and it's going to force 3 sodiums out, right? So 3 sodiums are going to get forced outside. And that, again, takes energy. So this is also going to take energy. So these are the different transporters in the alpha intercalated cell. But I want you to really try to focus on the key concept. And the concept here is that you're trying to get acid out of the blood, and you do that by bringing extra protons or making extra protons in the intercalated cell, and you saw how that happened. But the trick is, well, what do you do with them? Well, you have to dump them into the urine, and that's the whole concept. Getting acid into the urine is a process that is either going to take energy, like those ATP pumps, or it's going to take some cleverness through a gradient, like that sodium gradient. And 2 of these things, I'll point to again, this one and this one, are going to be driven by aldosterone. So that's where aldosterone comes into play in these cells. We're going to talk about antidiuretic. Hormone, and you can see that I've already started drawing for this video, and the main reason is because I'm not a great drawer and I wanted to make sure that everything was pretty clear. And so I drew out on one side the pituitary gland and on the other brain. And so antidiuretic hormone, I underline ADH because that's usually what it's called. People call it ADH. Sometimes people call it vasopressin as well. And actually vasopressin is good because it's useful. You can see vaso kind of refers to blood vessels, and pressin is squeezing down on blood vessels. Gives you a clue as to what the hormone is doing. So I've drawn for you the hypothalamus here, and also right below it, this would be kind of the infundibulum, kind of the neck, infundibulum. And at the very bottom, the pituitary. So this is the actual pituitary down here. And there's a front and back to this. And the front, facing forward, closer to the eyes, would be the anterior pituitary. So that'd be over here, anterior pituitary. And back here, this lobe would be the posterior pituitary because it's a little bit further back. And since we're naming stuff, let me just go ahead and round it out. This right here is actually the optic chiasm. It has to do with vision. And at the very good, because it's useful for this video. And the main reason is because I'm not a great drawer and I want to make sure that everything was pretty clear. And so I drew out on one side the pituitary gland and on the other the brain. And so antidiuretic hormone, I underline ADH because that's usually what it's called. People call it ADH. Sometimes people call it vasopressin as well. And actually vasopressin is good because it's useful. You can see vaso kind of refers to blood vessels, and pressin is squeezing down on blood vessels. Gives you a clue as to what the hormone is doing. So I've drawn for you the hypothalamus here, and also right below it, this would be kind of the infundibulum, kind of the neck, infundibulum. And at the very bottom, the pituitary. So this is the actual pituitary down here. And there's a front and back to this. And the front, facing forward, closer to the eyes, would be the anterior pituitary, so that'd be over here, anterior pituitary. And back here, this lobe would be the posterior pituitary, because it's a little bit further back. And since we're naming stuff, let me just go ahead and round it out. This right here is actually the optic chiasm. It has to do with vision. So I'm just going to write optic chiasm, so you know what we're talking about. And the only reason I even bring that up is because just above it, let's say in this area, just above it, and if I was to draw it over on my little diagram, that'd be like maybe right there, is what's called the supra, S-U-P-R-A, supra optic nucleus. Supraoptic nucleus. The nucleus here just refers to a collection of nerve cell bodies, not the nucleus we usually think of, meaning not the one where it's sitting inside of a cell and kind of directing the flow of traffic and the brains of the cell in a way of saying. But here the nucleus is actually just a collection of little nerve cell bodies. And I'm actually just going to draw two, but you know there's actually many more there. This is just for diagram purposes. And actually, if I was to draw the rest of this nerve, you would actually go all the way down. And this is actually beginning to share with you some of the cool aspects of this hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. You can see that basically these nerve cells start in one spot and they go all the way down to the posterior pituitary through the infundibulum. So this is how the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary are connected through nerves. And these nerves are actually full of the hormone ADH. So we've already talked about the fact that this is related to ADH, but now you can see exactly how ADH is actually being made in these nerve cells. And it's actually sitting here waiting for the right moment for these nerves to release it. And this ADH is actually a small protein. So it's actually a small protein, and it's 9 amino acids long. So it's actually pretty small. This is ADH, 9 amino acids. So it's pretty teeny, and it's a hormone. And if you know it's an amino acid-based hormone, you can think of it as a peptide or protein. Hormone and distinguish it from the steroid hormones. So this is how ADH is made. It's made in these nerve cells. And the next thing to talk about is how it's released. And so if you have, let's say, a little capillary bed in here with little arterioles and capillaries coming together into little venules on this side, what happens is that when there's a trigger, and actually maybe I should write that in a very bold color, let's say red. That's my favorite bold color. When there's a trigger, these nerve cells right here are going to fire off their ADH. They're going to release all that ADH, and it's going to dump right here into this moment for these nerves to release it. And this ADH is actually a small protein. So it's actually a small protein, and it's 9 amino acids long. So it's actually pretty small. This is ADH, 9 amino acids. So it's pretty teeny, and it's a hormone. And if you know it's an amino acid-based hormone, you can think of it as a peptide or protein hormone and distinguish it from the steroid hormones. So this is how ADH is made. It's made in these nerve cells. And the next thing to talk about is how it's released. And so if you have, let's say, a little capillary bed in here with little arterioles and capillaries coming together into little venules on this side, what happens is that when there's a trigger, and actually maybe I should write that in a very bold color, let's say red. That's my favorite bold color. When there's a trigger, these nerve cells right here are going to fire off their ADH. They're going to release all that ADH. it's going to dump right here into this area where all the capillaries are. And of course, the flow of blood is going to carry all that ADH into the little vein. And let me draw the venule in the vein and basically take it to the rest of the body. So this is how ADH actually gets released out of the nerve cells that live in the supraoptic nucleus and gets out to the body. It basically does it by dumping into that posterior pituitary and getting picked up by all those little capillaries and venules. So I guess the next issue is figure out what is the trigger. So what is the trigger for this little supraoptic nucleus that I've drawn here? So let's have a very bold color. Let's say red. That's my favorite bold color. When there's a trigger, these nerve cells right here are going to fire off their ADH. They're going to release all that ADH, and it's going to dump right here into this area where all the capillaries are. And of course, the flow of blood is going to carry all that ADH into the little vein. And let me draw the venule in the vein and basically take it to the rest of the body. So this is how ADH actually gets released out of the nerve cells that live in the supraoptic nucleus and gets out to the body. It basically does it by dumping into that posterior pituitary and getting picked up by all those little capillaries and venules. So I guess the next issue is figure out what is the trigger. So what is the trigger for this little supraoptic nucleus that I've drawn here? So let's talk about that. Let me make some space. Now we've got a clean bit of canvas. So let's talk about the triggers that our body uses to know when to fire off that ADH to get it released. So the main trigger, and this is probably the one trigger that you want to take away. If you're going to forget everything else, try to remember this one. The main trigger is going to be high blood concentration. And the way we think about blood concentration is in osmolarity. Osmolarity. So let me write that down. Osmolarity. So what osmolarity refers to is if you took all the solutes that are floating around in the blood, so that includes things like everything from like protein to sodium to potassium, everything that is going to drag water into the blood vessels, if you combine all that, then what is your total blood concentration going to be? And you can almost think of it as like a meter. So let me draw for you like a little meter here. So on one side you've got, let's say something like that. And on one side, let's say you've got 260, and on the other side 320. And this is just concentrations, right? So 280 and 300. And this is osms per liter. Actually, these are the units here. So osmolarity as measured in osms per liter. So this is the concentration, and what you want to do is you want to really stay in this area right here. This is kind of your green zone. This is where the body likes to be, generally speaking. And if it's here, if it's in this area, or if it's in this area, then that's where the body is not too happy. And so, for example, let's say you're in this first zone. This would mean that your body is noticing that the blood is too dilute. And if it's on this side, your body's noticing that it's too salty. The body is saying that the blood is too salty. And so in this case, if you have, let's say, like I said, a meter down here, if the needle is falling in this area, then that's going to be a trigger for ADH release. So that's the first trigger that we can talk about. In fact, why don't we even go back up and add that to our diagram? So I'm going to put that into our diagram so that we can see it very clearly as being one of the triggers. So let's imagine you have right here a little nerve cell, and I'm going to draw it this way purposefully because we actually don't know where these little osmoreceptors are. All we know is that they do a fantastic job, but we don't know exactly where these osmoreceptors are. And this is my little diagram that I drew before, and you can now think if the osmoreceptor is telling me that it's over there, then that's a problem. In fact, why don't I even go one step further and label this as an osmoreceptor. Osmoreceptor. So if my osmoreceptor is set to tell me that it's too salty, that is one of the signals that's going to trigger ADH release. Okay, so now what's a second trigger? What's another reason why we might release ADH? Low blood volume. Low blood volume. Think about that for a second. How in the world would your body even know that the blood volume is too low? Well, let's go back to basics. Let's go back to the heart. That's where I like to begin because that's how I always think about it, is just very simply what is going into the heart and what's coming out. Well, we know we have blood vessels, large ones in fact, larger veins, dumping into the heart, right? So we have the superior and inferior vena cava. This is the superior vena cava, this is a large vein, this is the inferior vena cava. And these aren't the only large veins, but these are two examples of large veins. And we also have the right atrium, right? So we have a couple of spots here that are in the blood vessels where we might have little nerve endings. So nerve endings in these areas are going to start recognizing when the blood volume is low because remember, the venous system, this is kind of stretch, the venous stretch from something we talked about a long time ago. venous system is actually going to be a larger volume system. So if there's ever a decrease in volume, that would be one of the best places to figure it out, right? So inflammation in the walls, so basically these nerve fibers rather in the walls of the vessels are going to be less stretched, and they're going to say, well, why are we less stretched? And the answer is that there's actually less blood volume. So when they're less stretched, they're going to send a signal and say, hey, something's up, we have less blood volume, and I think the brain needs to know about that. So that's how a signal gets sent all the way up to the brain. And actually I can draw that in as well. So let's put in, let's say, a little receptor here, and now these are going to go down and sense low volume from those receptors in the large veins in the right atrium. Okay, what's another trigger? You can see there are a lot of different triggers. I'm putting up one after another. Let's put another trigger up there. What's another reason why ADH would be secreted? Maybe a decrease in blood pressure. Now, we know that the veins tell us a lot of information about volume, so it might extend that the arteries can tell us about pressure. And you might recall from another video where we talked about baroreceptors that this is a fantastic way to get information about pressure. So let me draw some of those baroreceptors. And baroreceptor just refers to pressure receptor. And so we have baroreceptors that are in the aortic arch right there, and we also have baroreceptors in the carotid sinuses on both sides. So these baroreceptors are going to recognize when the blood pressure is starting to go low, and they're going to send a signal up to the brain to say, hey, again, we need to do something about this. Our pressure is low. So that's another signal up to the brain, and that we can draw in right here and say, okay, maybe something like this. And that would be a signal about low, let's write that here, low pressure. So now we've got signals about high osmolarity, low volume, low pressure. Are there any other signals that we can think of? And one more jumps to my mind. Angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2. So you remember angiotensin 2 is actually part of the whole RAS system. This is part of the RAS system, the renin, angiotensin, I'll just write AT, aldosterone system. And so angiotensin 2 is actually going to be another trigger. So you can actually imagine through a blood vessel, you might have a nerve nearby, and this is going to trigger right here, this molecule of angiotensin, which has 8 little amino acids, is going to be a signal to that nerve that it needs to let the body know, or the brain know rather, that pressures are low. And so this is another signal. Let me write that up here in our picture. So another signal could be something like this, maybe right here. And the exact location I'm drawing is actually just kind of arbitrary, but the idea is that you have angiotensin 2 having effects on the brain as well. And so this little molecule is going to come and let the brain know that, hey, even the kidneys are trying to do something about the blood pressure, and it would be great if the brain got involved in releasing some ADH if needed. So these are the different triggers, and like I said in the beginning, probably the main one you want to think about as far as ADH is concerned is this osmoreceptor. This is really the most important one because everything else is secondary to that. That is definitely the major function of ADH. We left off the story of antidiuretic hormone when it was just kind of secreted into the blood vessels of the posterior pituitary. So it was just kind of synthesized, just made. It's a little hormone, and ADH was on its way to different parts of the body. So let's just pick up the story right there and figure out where does it go next. So this little molecule is, we said, a small peptide hormone made up of amino acids, and so I'm just going to draw it here. And this little hormone is going to go off to do a couple of important things. So we know at the end of the day it really wants to increase blood pressure. So one of the places it visits is all of the vessels of the body, all the arterial vessels of the body, and specifically it targets smooth muscle. So this hormone is going to go and get the smooth muscle to constrict, and we know that when smooth muscles constrict, the blood vessels are actually going to tighten down, and we call that vasoconstriction. So the blood vessels are going to get tight and small, and that's going to increase resistance, and increased resistance is going to relate to blood pressure, and we'll talk about how. We know that there's that formula, and right over here, delta P equals flow, Q is flow, times resistance is R, and you can actually change that around to say arterial pressure minus venous pressure equals, and we know that flow is actually stroke volume times heart rate, and it's all multiplied by resistance. So if you look at this, if we assume for the moment that the venous pressure is going to be basically unchanged, then anything that increases the resistance over here is going to increase our pressure over here. So that's why, in this case, if ADH is able to cause constriction of the blood vessels and increase resistance, our pressure would go up as well. So that's actually one of the things that it does. The other thing that it does is it's going to act on the kidney, right? So it's going to have an effect on the kidney. Here's my kidney. And specifically what it's going to do is it's going to cause increased reabsorption of water. So increased reabsorption of water is going to increase our stroke volume. So now you can see the other effect it's going to have. If it's going to cause your stroke volume to go up, then just as before, now you have an increased stroke volume, so your arterial pressure is going to go up, maybe doubly up. So it's going to cause the blood pressure to go up for a couple different reasons. Now let's explore this second point a little bit more detail, the whole idea of how it causes the stroke volume to go up. So for that, what I want to do is I'm actually going to create a little bit of space, and I'm going to draw out again, as I've done before, the efferent and afferent arteriole. So we know that blood is going to enter the kidneys, and it's going to kind of do this twisting on itself in the glomerulus. And so this is our little glomerulus. And there's the proximal convoluted tubule, and there's the loop of Henle, and this is the distal convoluted tubule, and finally collecting duct, right? So we know that this is basically what the nephron looks like. And I haven't labeled all the parts, but I'm going to label the important part, which is this part right here. So this area here is the collecting duct, and what I'm circling in blue is what the ADH is actually going to work on. It's going to work on this area, the collecting duct. So it's going to have its effect here specifically. And let me try to draw this a little bit larger so we can see exactly what goes on. So let's imagine you have, let's say, one cell there, and here's another cell here. Something like that. And you have a blood vessel going alongside of it. Now, we haven't actually talked about this before, but down in here, let me switch colors for a moment. We have urine going this way, and blood going this way. So already, you might be a little surprised. You're thinking, well, why is blood going up and urine going down? That makes no sense. Now think about this. Before, when we were talking about blood and urine flowing other parts of the nephron, we were kind of separating out the nephron, talking about this top bit. So we were talking about kind of this top bit here. And in here, the concentration is around 300. And actually, the units on that, I'll just write the units up here, are milliosms. So it was around 300. But if you go deeper, it's about 600. And then if you go deeper than that, it's about 900. And if you go down here, it's about 1200. So what's happening as you go deeper is that it's basically getting more and more salty, right? It's getting very salty. I'll actually write that sideways. Very salty as you go down. And that saltiness is really, really important because what it does is it allows us to concentrate our urine. And you'll see why I say that. So keep that saltiness in mind and the fact that there's this big gradient. And I'm going to actually just assume right now that we're talking about something, let's say at the 900 level. So we're at this point, kind of right here. 900 milliosms. All right? So we've got a pretty salty area out here. Now, as I said, urine is flowing through, and in these collecting duct cells, we have something called an aquaporin that basically sits like this. Let me actually show you what it would look like. So these areas are not going to allow water to go through. That's actually the first point that I want to make. Water cannot go through these areas, except for when there's a little aquaporin channel. I'm drawing the channels for you, but you can see they're not on the surface, right? So there's no way that water is sitting over here. There's no way that it can actually get through. It actually just bounces off because it's not able to permeate the cell. It can't actually get in. So water just kind of bounces back and basically goes down into the urine. Now, what ADH does, and this is the neat thing, so ADH, what it'll do is it will float up. So ADH is actually going to float through the blood, right? Because we said that ADH is going to be all over the body. So this little molecule is going to go through and float by this collecting duct cell, and it's going to have an effect on it. So it's going to have an effect on this collecting duct cell. What it's going to do exactly is it's going to make those little aquaporins. Let me write that out, actually. This is an aquaporin. And you can see that's a really easy word to remember because it's literally aqua, meaning water, making a pore for water. So this aquaporin vesicle is actually going to merge with the wall. It's actually going to merge with the wall like that. So let me actually erase a little bit and show you what would happen. So now you have, instead of this aquaporin sitting out here, you literally have little channels that are now fused in with the wall. So you can see how those little vesicles just bumped right into the wall and fused into it. And now water is going to get a free ride across. It's going to be able to just go right through that channel, just like that, boop, and into the blood. And it's going to do it again here, and it's going to go here. So all this water is just gushing in to the blood. Look at all this water. And so this blood is going to be loaded with water now, something that it did not have before because the water couldn't get across before. And so this blood is going to go up, loaded with water, because of the ADH. The ADH basically allowed all that water to finally get across, and the blood is now full of water. And so now you can see how the volume of blood is going to go up. And if the volume of blood goes up, it's going to create a larger stroke volume for the heart. So that's specifically how the stroke volume goes up.
Alright, yeah, we're in a game. I'm gonna join teams. I'm gonna keep myself muted on Discord because I don't want to hear this.
Science will reveal the truth. Do not deviate from the plan, and victory will be ours. Attack commences in 30 seconds. Hello.
We're going to compare aldosterone and ADH, antidiuretic hormone, side by side. And to do this, I think it would be helpful if we just do a little recap on how these two work, because it's going to
I'll add
inform
your,
exactly what they do. So if we have a little nephron here, a little tubule, and these are the cells lining the tubule and going to eventually send the urine on its way out. And next to it, I have, let's say, a little blood vessel. And just to save myself from drawing it twice, I'm going to just cut and paste this over to this side right here. And in this tubule, we know that on one side we have, on this aldosterone side, we have water permeability. So this membrane that kind of separates the two, or this layer of cells, is water permeable. But over here, we know on the ADH side, this is not water permeable. And the reason I'm saying it's different is because we know that although they look the same, these are different parts of the nephron, right? Different parts of the nephron. And the way that aldosterone works, the main thing it does, is it's going to pull in sodium. And it's going to spit out into the urine potassium. That's the main activity of aldosterone in terms of capturing sodium. And what happens is that sodium, we know, is not permeable. Sodium is not permeable to membranes, not able to cross membranes very easily. And that's actually really important, because if it can't cross membranes, then it means that it's going to contribute to tonicity, because we know that the ions that cannot cross membranes are the ones that are the biggest contributors to tonicity. And in fact, this is actually very important, because potassium, by comparison, can, I'll say, slightly cross membranes, can slightly cross membranes. So if you have one ion that cannot cross membranes at all, and you give away the ion that can slightly cross membranes, then your tonicity goes up, because overall you're getting more ions that are going to stay in the blood vessel. And because they're able to stay in the blood vessel and can contribute to tonicity, water is going to be driven into the blood vessels. So that's really how aldosterone is dragging water into the blood vessels, through increased tonicity. And by comparison, the ADH is just using water channels. I mean, if water is unable to get across otherwise, if you throw in some water channels, then you have no problem gathering water. So these are the key differences. One of them uses an osmol to drag water across. That's why we always say sodium, or water follows sodium, and the other is just using channels. So let me make a little bit of space here. Let's see if we can create some space down here. And I'm going to create two categories. So let's say one category is volume, and the other category is osmolarity. Osmolarity. And we know osmolarity actually is simply a fraction, right? It's just osmoles divided by volume. So the same thing that we have in the other column. And I'm going to do that for this side as well. Osmolarity and osmoles divided by volume. And we're going to actually see how these two work, and whether one or both of these things will be affected by the hormones. So we know that the way that aldosterone works is by raising the osmoles. It's going to change this. It's going to increase the osmoles. And as a result, it's actually going to increase the volume, right? So it's going to increase the volume as well. So actually, both osmoles and volume are affected. And so let me start out by just simply circling this box, because we know that the volume is affected. But because osmoles and volume are both affected, and that they're proportional to one another, we usually don't think of osmolarity being affected by aldosterone, because both the numerator and the denominator are going to go up if there's a lot of aldosterone around, or down if there's not any aldosterone around. So osmolarity doesn't really get affected by aldosterone. Now, ADH is a little different, right? So in ADH, we have volume going up. That's really the primary thing that's happening. And so we would say, of course, well, we have a volume change here. But in terms of osmoles, you haven't really changed the osmoles with ADH, not directly. And if you haven't changed the osmoles, and you have changed the volume, then osmolarity is changed, right? If you just change the denominator but not the numerator, then the number will change. And so that's why ADH affects osmolarity, although it doesn't affect osmoles. Kind of a tricky thing, but I think you can see it now that you see the numerator does not change, but the overall fraction does. So you have on this side increased volume, and you have increased volume on this side, and you have decreased osmolarity. So these are the major changes from the hormones. Now let me make a little bit more space, and we'll just continue this line of reasoning. So if these are the changes, now imagine a scenario where where you want to increase volume, let's say you want to just increase volume, but maintain, you don't want to change the osmolarity. I'm going to write osmolarity. So if you want to increase volume but maintain osmolarity, which hormone would you use? And let's, because we can't see the hormone, now let's just use aldosterone.
Maybe I have to move the microphone really close. I think you should be able to hear me now. Hello?
Aldosterone, aldosterone, and ADH. And I'll just put up arrows and down arrows. So if these are the two hormones, if I want to increase volume, I would definitely use aldosterone because that doesn't affect osmolarity. But I would not use any ADH. I'll put a little circle with a line through it.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, it's maxed out. Hello. I think I have to get really close to the microphone for you to be able to hear very well. I don't know why.
Throw us in a deathmatch, please. Grazie.
I would not use ADH because, again, I want to maintain osmolarity. So I would really not want to use ADH in that scenario. Now, let's say you wanted to increase volume, and all right, regardless of osmolarity, regardless, meaning you don't really care if osmolarity changes. And this could be like, let's say you have a big car accident and you're bleeding out, and the only thing you really care about right away is increasing your blood volume. That's the only thing that matters. So you really want to increase volume and you want to do it fast. Well, in this scenario, you're definitely going to want to use everything available to you, aldosterone and ADH. And the fact that osmolarity will go down with ADH really doesn't matter because we said regardless in this scenario. So because of that, I'm going to employ ADH this time. So you can kind of get a sense for how this is going to work, right? Now let's say I wanted to decrease osmolarity, and I wanted, and let's say regardless of volume. Regardless of volume. So I don't really care if the volume changes a little bit here or there.
Oh, gotcha. Oh man, I got another game before that.
Science will reveal the truth. It is not my preference to see the matters personally, but I will see them done.
Sup?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, fuck. We got a game. Ugh.
I'm on fire.
This is so stuffed right now.
This will heal you.
I hit.
There was a flaw in my approach.
Well, that's good.
Sorry, my health was low and I didn't want to die. Okay, kill them.
Dang.
They're low. He's dead.
Allow me to repair the damage.
Get back on point if you need heals. guys pull back toward our side a little bit, I'm gonna throw some heal balls.
Yeah, so is mine.
My internet actually disconnected. What happened?
No, everybody
Mine
disconnected.
That was a server thing. That wasn't us.
Two,
Oh.
100 players
80
ahead
players
of me.
ahead of you. What?
Oh, I'm already in.
What's
Overwatch?
going on?
5.
Yeah,
Yep,
I'm
I'm
already in.
Alright.
I win.
I've never seen Overwatch do this before. I'm so sad we lost that win there.
I can just win again there.
It's because I picked Bastion.
Someone's hacking Blizzard right now on their team. They're like, nah, fam, we ain't gonna lose this one.
Just searching for game server right now.
Overwatch just died. Like Overwatch just Blizzard died. It seems.
Yeah, what just happened?
I was really concerned because I had connection issues earlier this season, and I finally thought I fixed them. And then I saw that, and I was like, oh my god, please don't tell me I'm about to lose SR over this.
I hope I didn't lose SR over this.
No, there's no way. If everyone just got kicked out, you don't lose SR. It'll say, if you go into your match results, it'll just say incomplete.
Oh, rejoin game.
Oh,
Still can't get in. I'm still searching for
I'm
game
still
server.
searching for the game server too.
Oh, he joined match.
Oh, now it says failing, dude.
I can't rejoin match.
Oh yeah, the button doesn't work.
Well, that's probably the match is probably
Think of
no
osmolarity being
longer.
affected by aldosterone because
being
both the numerator
hosted.
and the denominator are going to go up if
Right.
there's a lot of aldosterone around or down if
Oh,
there's
I'm
not enough
back in
aldosterone around.
fully.
So osmolarity doesn't really get affected by aldosterone.
I'm still searching for game server because Overwatch is really Blizzard is having a hard time finding their
I
own
am
server right now.
suspended. Wow.
You're suspended?
Yep.
You actually got suspended?
Yep.
I bet you lost 50 SR points too.
Let me check. Let me check if I
No.
got. I can't see if I got suspended yet.
Yeah, I did. Fun.
And
How do you
lost
know
my
you got
trial.
suspended? Did they say it? Did you get a message?
Literally just try to go into ranked and more like.
Oh yeah, I lost SR for that.
Are you
now I'm
fucking
3,000.
kidding me?
Damn.
Oh
I
yeah.
dropped under
wow.
2400. That's fun.
I mean, to be fair, they did say they were gonna do maintenance around this time.
But still.
I thought it was this morning. What day is it?
It's Thursday at 10 a.m. It's not. We
Is
are
it not
hours
Thursday?
out.
ADH is a little different, right?
No,
So
it's
ADH,
well,
we have
it's
volume stuff,
Thursday
that's
now,
really
but
the
it's
primary thing that's
Thursday at
happening. And so we would say, of course,
12:47 in the morning.
Oh, it's still Wednesday.
Time zone
I
are you?
still cannot connect to the game
West.
server.
Put me in a queue again. Now there's 2,000 people ahead of me.
All of the Overwatch community just lost like 30 SR simultaneously.
1,000 players ahead of me.
This is the
This is
SR reset.
ridiculous.
SR reset. This is the perk.
where we have a volume range here. But in terms of osmoles, you haven't really changed the osmoles with ADH, not directly.
I hope they
And if
do
you haven't changed the
something tomorrow
osmoles,
about
and you
this.
have changed the volume, then osmolarity
Yeah, I
is
sure
changed, right?
hope
If you just change
so.
the denominator but not the
I didn't
numerator,
even know
then
the
the number will
season
change.
ended in a week.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see. I'm actually gonna message one of my other friends playing HOTS right now and ask them if their servers also went down. Alright guys, so while we're sitting here waiting for Overwatch to fix their shit, How is everyone?
I just lost 50 SR.
We're all in the same unhappy boat. I'm down to 21 now.
I am also down to 21.
Still at
And I cannot
29.
find a game
I'm down. I'm at
Still can't get into
2393
a game
now.
server either. Okay, Bob, we get it. You're like almost in diamond. It's okay. Not Bob. I don't...
His
Fucking
DPS
cheated.
is on.
Hey,
Oh, dude, yeah, my DPS is screwed down though.
No, actually, congratulations. Good shit.
In Q now there's 2,000 people ahead of me.
Same.
It just
guys,
puts me. It just putting me further and further back.
I
It's like
think what
Steam
this
time.
this means is we switch to Riot Games and go play League of Legends now.
I hate League of Legends.
I
rather
have
play
I
Smite.
hate League of Legends.
And so that's how
I
ADH
have
affects
over
osmolarity,
4,000
although
hours
it
in
doesn't
that
affect
game and will
osmolars.
never
It's
play
kind
it
of a tricky
again.
thing, but I
That
think
was
you
a
can see it
joke.
now that you see the numerator does not change, but the overall fraction does.
Fuck League of
So you
Legends.
have
That
on
game's
this side
disgusting.
increased volume, and you have increased
Smite's
volume on this
better.
side, and you have decreased osmolarity. So these are the major changes from these hormones.
What's better?
Now let me make a little bit more space. Let's
Smite.
continue this line of reasoning. So if these are the changes,
Smite
now
is a
imagine
dead game though.
Not really. It's not a mainstream game, so not really anyone ever talks about it. Still play
I
it for
haven't.
fun.
Interesting. I used to play a ton of Smite. I don't know anymore. Not sure how I feel about Avatar: The Last Airbender characters being added, but
Who?
I was told. Wait, I gotta read. Now I gotta read something. Give me a second. Yeah, Smite is adding Avatar characters.
I mean, I'm fine with it.
I had to check to make sure. I don't know. It just feels weird to me.
Well, I mean, they added King Arthur in Maryland, so it wouldn't surprise me if they added someone like them, because kind of goes well with that whole aspect, theme style game.
Even is Smite.
It's like League.
Never heard of it.
Well,
Um,
Smite is a 3D MOBA. It's like,
Okay.
who opened my door? It's a dog. It's a little different than League, but it's a MOBA nonetheless. I have never seen. This is.
I've never been in a queue to get in a game.
I've been accused to get games before. I've never had something.
I mean, like to get inside of the actual.
No, I definitely have
Like
back
600 people ahead of me.
back
Oh
with
yeah,
League
no,
of
I'm
Legends.
just on a different game at the moment.
It keeps putting me at the back of the queue.
It keeps making my connection fail.
Yeah, and then it puts me at the back.
Damn, I have a 40% accuracy rate with Farah.
Could you get accuracy as far, or could you just shoot and it does damage?
Mm. I don't even know what good accuracies are, so. Isn't it like 30 or 40 or higher, something like that?
I don't know.
Ever? Oh, that's from. Why that go? Interesting.
Oh yeah, this is over Twitter now.
Which
Oh.
Twitter?
Just Twitter in general. People are asking for their SR back.
I
I
didn't
mean,
see
it's
that.
only 2 games worth of SR.
Yeah, but I mean, like some people were streaming it and they're in the top 500s.
Oh yeah, that is an L.
It's like, why am I 120 now? This isn't fair.
Jesus Christ.
This is so bad.
I was not expecting this.
I was so excited to play Overwatch and get SR tonight. This is very upsetting.
I was trying to practice for the tournament tonight. But I guess I'm not doing that today.
I just wanted SR because I knew Genius would carry me.
And DPS, not.
So who's planning on playing in the tournament? I need to start writing down people's names.
I can play.
I could be around if you need a support.
Alright.
Hey, I'm in finally.
Must be
Lucky.
nice.
Yeah, dude, lucky ass motherfucker.
Yeah, that
Okay.
50 SR from a disconnect really does suck though. Also,
I'll
the
join the
season
tournament.
ends in 7 days. I didn't know the season ended in 7
You better
days.
give us 8 days for the season.
Oh, I'm in. Let's go. I'm not even suspended. Oh,
I'm
Well,
probably
it's
banned.
probably already been 10 minutes.
I'm probably banned.
okay, true.
I'm surprised I'm not suspended because I had a bunch of DCs earlier in the season. Everyone
Oh,
in
wait, no, I'm on.
general
I'm
is
on
talking about it right now.
Yeah, no, I had a DC in 2 of my ranked matches.
Dude, I'm so
Not fun.
mad.
Oh, wait, I'm logged into the wrong account. Suspended. Oops. Let's see.
I'll be right back.
Some people lost 150 SR.
Yeah, no, I lost about. I was at
I'm entering
1473, and I'm at
game.
14 or 1393 now. I lost 80.
I'm entering game. Let's see if I'm suspended. I'm not suspended.
I only lost 50, so.
I'm a little bit scared to keep playing.
Play like the role you don't care about. You care about the least.
Oh man.
Or just going.
I'd imagine they give it back.
That's what I'm
Scenario
imagining too.
You want to.
I wonder
increase
how hard that'd be for Overwatch to do.
Not
Yeah,
really. They
volume.
just need to like
Let's say you want to just increase volume,
give people
but maintain.
SR. I mean,
You want
if
to
they can
change
give people loot
the
boxes, they
osmolarity.
can give people
Or
SR.
osmolarity.
It's
With
not
age,
everyone
not
because not everyone was playing.
Well, it's probably not that hard to find out what games were going on at that time and just be like, here's
Yeah.
your 50 SR back from your disconnect. I'm sure there'll be an official statement tomorrow after the update, or after the server maintenance.
We're getting back in a group or not?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm down to play if everyone else is still interested in playing.
Who's still trying to get in?
Are you still trying to get in?
Huh?
You in?
Oh, no, I'll be on there in a minute.
He'll be in after the 2,000 people.
Find a different game, you said.
I play Overwatch for the servers, guys.
Or do you think we have time to play a game or
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Alright, I'm gonna start.
Alright, let's go again. Let's try to get that
And if you
SR
haven't changed
back.
the osmoles, and you have changed the volume, then osmolarity.
Yeah,
is
the
changed,
real
right? If you
T
just
though
change the
is when
denominator,
it
not the
happens
numerator, then the
again,
number will change.
and
so
then
that's
everyone
Oh,
just
and then we just feel stupid because
yeah, because we didn't have the patience to wait to see if the servers were back up officially or not.
Oh my god, I don't want this.
Who's on Bash?
Are you gonna... What?
Are you on Bash?
Dude, I just got his golden weapons.
Oh my god. Why would you buy that?
I didn't know who else to... I don't play any other DPS besides, like... I don't really like Soldier's golden weapon, or Sombras, or Tracers, so... Why not Bastions?
I'd buy like
You get
Genji.
two of his, too.
You get like Genji or whatever.
I have Genjis.
Hanzo? I got Hanzo. Should be a Hanzo man.
See, look, I'm...
You're really lame. You're not gonna
What do you
kill me.
mean?
You're
What do
not
you
gonna kill
mean?
me.
Where are you?
I didn't know where to go. I knew you were right behind me. I had 5 hit points left.
The golden weapon gives me more damage.
Oh, of course. You know, as they say, skins get wins.
Oh, I headshot you too. I'm about to just go hog and just
That's not fun. I suggest you don't do that one. Hero, you bitch.
Damn, I just gave myself a mini heart attack.
dude, I can't. I'm going hog.
Oh.
Oh, buddy.
That was a
Remember me?
really awful reload.
Alright, yeah, I'm not messing around next time.
I saw you just following me. That was terrifying.
Whatever.
Dragon hog. Oh, I knew you were there. I literally heard footsteps.
This isn't fair. I play supports.
Flight ADH affects osmolarity, although it doesn't affect osmoles. Kind of a tricky thing, but I think you can see it now.
Easy.
You see the numerator does not change. the overall
Hey,
fraction
we
does.
got a game.
So you have on this side increased volume, and you have increased volume on this side, and you have decreased osmolarity. So these are the major changes from these formulas.
I'm
Let me
not
make a little bit more
ready.
space, and we'll just continue this line of reasoning. So
And we're defending, you know what that means.
No.
Are you actually going Bastion? I don't want to lose SR over this.
Bastion's a good character, I don't know what you mean.
We can get a shield tank. Bastion's not.
No, I don't want to go him. Wait, do I want to? Yeah, I'll go him. He's my main after all.
We need.
What?
I'm talking to myself about what I don't know what I want to play.
Oh, I thought you were saying we need something else. Alright.
No, it was me trying to decide what healer I wanted to play here.
I just changed the team color to orange in game, and I'm still trying to get used to it.
That's
Change the team color.
Why
Yeah.
did you do that?
Because I am a nerd for aesthetics, and the team's colors are orange, red, and, you know,
Oh my god.
black.
Dude.
Okay.
I'm not that good of a widow, so I'm probably
This,
gonna.
ready for this?
And I
Right.
didn't really want me to
Card.
color the same team.
I was like, throw that E in, get that ult charge.
I'm behind them. I got some headshots in on them.
You guys up?
I'm behind them again. Oh, but Reinhardt's respawning. I don't want to jump down because he's gonna see me. Is he out?
Oh, I'm literally 1 HP.
If you
Oh, Echo's low. Bitch.
She's not low anymore, I'll tell you that much. Oh, it's massive.
Echo just walked off when she killed you, and I was like, all right, I'll take this free res.
Are they all out of their spawns yet? Did we know this?
They're all this one.
I'm asleep, but on his dead. Oh, yay! Thank you. I'm just gonna. I'm so low
What
on
the
HP.
heck?
I hear somebody's
Who's
footsteps
behind you
behind
guys?
us.
Behind
Oh,
you?
yeah.
Where is it? Up. You can push this Zarya
Mercy's on
behind us.
statue. Mercy's on
I have a
statue.
vision. She's in the building now. She's mega. Back up top.
Yeah, Zarya's up top.
She's
She's behind
dropped.
us.
One.
She's one. She's dead.
You're down a healer.
Oh, he's so low too.
Biggest rapist.
You guys can contest that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we can hop on.
You
and
gotta
get
play
that.
together. You gotta play together and step on that point though right now.
Hear you twice.
Well, Zarya.
Go back then.
Yeah, our Zarya didn't move up,
Go
and I
back.
couldn't. So we're not in team
Oh
chat.
yeah, I forgot. We're not speaking in team chat.
Yep, that's two of us down.
We just need to regroup. Bree's going behind. Sorry, that got me.
Both of our. I didn't realize both of our
Hey,
tanks were
sorry.
in team chat. This is a big rub.
They're non-team chat?
They are. We're not. We're in Discord.
I know, but
I'm still in team chat though.
yeah, I'm in team chat. I can push the top to them. But the Zarya wasn't in the team.
They res a soldier, so.
Looking at the left.
Oh my god.
Still on the left.
To your right, Junkrat?
Yeah, soldier on the right.
McCree's getting ready to high noon, I bet.
Standing on top of payload. Alright, well that was a lot of ults.
I'll get back in the turn.
Damn it.
I have to say, I don't entirely understand our tank's mindset right now.
I don't know, man.
It's on the way out of position.
I think our Zarya's doing pretty okay, but I don't know about our other tank.
Fuck. Should go hit scan genius.
You know what? Yeah, shit, I don't know. But they can hit screen.
Are you kidding me?
I said,
I can go hit screen.
Yeah, you need to go hit scan. Somebody needs to go hit scan.
I'm fine.
Oh my god, that fucking soldier. I have sound barrier.
Use it when they grab it.
When you sound barrier all coalescence.
Do we want to waste 2 healing ults on this time?
I'm gonna sound barrier and this Reinhardt
Yeah,
moves
it's
up to
30
shadow.
seconds left. I'm coalescing
Yeah,
right now.
You guys are far.
Soldiers in the back line. He's low.
Reinhardt's low.
I'm just gonna get a couple
Winston
picks.
is. We can just.
Yeah, we just not let him on. Okay.
It's bad. I'm dead. Oh, I'm not dead.
Kind of low. I'm good.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, they went on. Okay.
I almost have ult.
I'm coming if we can contest.
Getting away.
Pop ult, go.
I don't have it.
Oh, kill him, kill him, kill him. Monkey will have ult in a second. He has it.
Stay on point, I'm dropping heal. 3, 2, 1, heal dropping.
Nope, that Reinhardt.
Yeah, they're Reinhardt. It's gonna kill us.
This Reinhardt has gotten so many fucking ults.
Overtime.
I wish we didn't have the tanks we did, but
It's not the tank's fault.
it's not the tank's fault. But I don't know that Winston Zyra was really a good pick.
I mean, it's fine.
Genius, what are you playing?
I don't even know. Go Hanzo.
got soldier again and another more junk. I'm behind them. I don't think they noticed me.
Oh, we're down our main tank. Oh, but their soldier's dead.
Their soldier's not dead anymore. Yep, I'm falling right back out there.
You guys win that, I'm coming back.
I'm low.
Nice.
You ready?
Soldiers on top.
Yeah, it's usually where I teleport, but I can't do it now.
Oh.
Yeah, he hit a wall when he was trying to
Good for
kill me.
red.
Alright, well I have a sound barrier. If
Can you
they
bump
decide
it?
to use it. I'm yeah.
Oh, that's behind us. I had tried.
Kill that Mercy, do not let her live. Thank you. Big accidental pick on that Junkrat. Oh, big death blossom. Big death blossom.
Try.
Taking. Let's go. We
Nice.
should have
That was
now.
such a good attack.
We have a lot more time than them, so.
I don't even have any time. We just have to get a tick and we win.
Is that how this one works? Or is it like we have to go as
Yeah.
much as possible?
Yeah, we literally just have to get a tick and the game's over.
They're staying on point, I'm guessing.
If these are the changes, now imagine
Only run.
They're running Orisa, May, and Hog, I think. Is what I saw.
Yep.
Hug left side, I'm healing.
I'm behind him again.
Think so. That was pretty embarrassing on their part, not gonna lie.
Pole still in here?
Huh?
You still joining us?
Yeah, I can.
Just finish your game.
You could take my spot because I gotta get out for the night.
Well, had fun in
Yeah.
our one game,
Was
No,
supposed
what do
to
you
be
mean,
two.
game and a half? Come on.
game and a half.
Yeah, we would have won that other one.
We would have, yeah. Not even back to my SR. We gotta win another game.
It's fine. I'll get. I'll win your turn.
You'll carry me.
I think I'm gonna dip.
Damn. All right. Well,
guys.
have fun. It's a good game.
in a scenario where you want to increase volume. Let's say you want to just increase volume, but maintain. You don't want to change the osmolarity. I'm gonna write osmolarity. So if you want to increase volume but maintain osmolarity, which hormone would you use? And let's because we can't see the hormones now, let's just use aldosterone, and ADH. And I'll just put up arrows and down arrows. So if these are the two hormones, if I want to increase volume, I would definitely use aldosterone because that doesn't affect osmolarity. But I would not use any ADH. I'll put a little circle with a line through it. I would not use ADH because again I want to maintain osmolarity. So I would really not want to use ADH in that scenario. Now let's say you wanted to increase volume, and I'll write regardless of osmolarity. Regardless. Meaning you don't really care if osmolarity changes. And this could be like, let's say you have a big car accident and you're bleeding out, and the only thing you really care about right away is increasing your blood volume. That's the only thing that matters. So you really want to increase volume. And you want to do it fast. Well, in this scenario, you're definitely going to want to use everything available to you, aldosterone and ADH. And the fact that osmolarity will go down with ADH really doesn't matter because we said regardless in this scenario. So because of that, I'm going to employ ADH this time. So you can kind of get a sense for how this is going to work, right? Now let's say I wanted to decrease osmolarity, and let's say regardless of volume. Regardless of volume. So I don't really care if the volume changes a little bit here or there. So in this case, regardless of volume, what would I do? Well, if I didn't really care about the volume and I just wanted to decrease osmolarity, well, that seems like a no-brainer, right? That's exactly what ADH will do. It will decrease osmolarity. And in this case, I don't really need aldosterone, right? Because I said in my question or my phrase here that I don't care about volume changes. So that's fine. I'll just use ADH and I'll tolerate the increase in volume. And the fourth scenario is let's say you want to increase osmolarity, or decrease osmolarity, set it backwards. And let's say you want to maintain volume. You don't want it to go up or down. Well, this is kind of a tricky one, right? Because to decrease osmolarity, well, only one hormone will do that for you. So you got to start with some ADH. But if you want to maintain volume, you know that ADH will cause your volume to go up a little bit. And if you don't want it to go up, you want to maintain volume, you might actually decrease aldosterone just a little smidge. So that would maintain your volume. Now, you can see how the two hormones basically have to work together to get the different outcomes, right? Depending on what your volume status is and what your osmolarity status is. And I could flip around all the arrows, right? I could say, well, what about decreased volume and maintain osmolarity, or decreased volume regardless of osmolarity? And you would basically just do the opposite of all these. Things. So you can see how really any tweak in volume and osmolarity can help you predict what the aldosterone and ADH will be doing. Osmolarity, and in this case, I don't really need aldosterone, right? Because I said in my questionnaire the fact that osmolarity will go down with ADH, but I would not use. Would you use? And let's because we can't see the hormones now, let's just use aldosterone, and ADH, and I'll just put up arrows and down arrows. So if these are the two hormones, if I want to increase volume, I would definitely use aldosterone because that doesn't affect osmolarity. But I would not use any ADH. I'll put a little circle with a line through it. I would not use ADH because, again, I want to maintain osmolarity. So I would really not want to use ADH in that scenario. Now, let's say you wanted to increase volume, and regardless of osmolarity, meaning you don't really care if osmolarity changes. And this could be like, let's say you have a big car accident and you're bleeding out, and the only thing you really care about right away is increasing your blood volume. That's the only thing that matters. So you really want to increase volume and you want to do it fast. Well, in this scenario, you're definitely going to want to use everything available to you, aldosterone and ADH. And the fact that osmolarity will go down with ADH really doesn't matter because we said regardless in this scenario. So because of that, I'm going to employ ADH this time. So you can kind of get a sense for how this is going to work, right? Now let's say I want to to decrease osmolarity.
Now entering ready for battle. Victory.
Decrease osmolarity. And let's say regardless of volume. Regardless of volume. So I don't really care if the volume changes a little bit here or there. So in this case, regardless of volume, what would I do? Well, if I didn't really care about the volume and I just wanted to decrease osmolarity, well, that seems like a no-brainer, right? That's exactly what ADH will do. It will decrease osmolarity. And in this case, I don't really need aldosterone, right? Because I said in my question or my phrase here that I don't care about volume changes. So that's fine. I'll just use ADH and I'll tolerate the increase in volume. And the fourth scenario is, let's say you want to increase osmolarity, or decrease osmolarity, set it backwards. And let's say you want to maintain volume. You don't want it to go up or down. Well, this is kind of a tricky one, right? Because to decrease osmolarity, well, only one hormone will do that for you. So you got to start.
So if you want to decrease osmolarity while maintaining volume, you have to like decrease. So your volume goes up during ADH. You need to decrease ADH and increase aldosterone.
With some ADH. But if you want to maintain volume, you know that ADH will cause your volume to go up a little bit. And if you don't want it to go up, you want to maintain volume, you may have to actually decrease aldosterone just a little smidge. So that would make.
Wait, aldosterone increases volume? Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. ADH increases volume. No, increases. I thought it increases both. So aldosterone must affect ADH more so as far as the osmolarity is concerned than ADH.
Maintain your volume. Now, you can see how the two hormones basically have to work together to get the different outcomes, right? Depending on what your volume status is and what your osmolarity status is. And I could flip around all the arrows. I could say, well, what about decreased volume and maintain osmolarity, or decreased volume regardless of osmolarity? And you would basically just do the opposite of all these things. So you can see how really any tweak in volume and osmolarity can help you predict what the aldosterone and ADH will be doing.
Alright. Which of the following releases renin? macula densa cells sense concentrations of which of the following? Pretty sure they sense sodium. Macula sodium ion. Oh, getting them right. Time to get one wrong. Mice subjected to a very high sodium diet were found to have a significant increase in plasma renin concentration. In order to test the hypothesis that this increase is due to the sensing of increased sodium by macula densa cells, an assay designed to detect which of the following signaling molecules should be performed. I mean, prostaglandins is the only thing that makes sense, I think. It's prostaglandins. Grab that. Make my flashcards. One at a time. We're gonna make all the flashcards so we can get a 528 on the MCAT. I am so salt. I am so salt. Alright, renin is not released in response to which of the following? Detection of low plasma electrolyte levels by macula densa cells. Not sure about that. Low plasma electrolyte levels by macula. Oh, no, that would release it, I think. I think might release it. Because that's sodium. Alright, detection of low blood pressure by baroreceptor cells. That would release it because renin increases your blood pressure. So detection of low blood pressure would make it increase. Would make renin release happen to increase blood pressure back. Detection of low glomerular filtrate electrolyte levels by macula densa cells. Oh. I think an innervation by not released. Oh, it might be A actually, because detection of low glomerular filtrate electrolyte levels. Wait, it's A or C? Let me think about this. Detection of low glomerular filtrate electrolyte levels. Oh, wait, no, that C makes sense, because that means you got, if there's low glomerular filtrate, that means there's low pressure in the glomerulus. So A would be the answer because C means that you want to increase the blood pressure in the glomerulus so you can increase the filtrate electrolyte levels. Skadoosh. Levels by macula densa cells. And grab this answer explanation, and I'll read it later when I go over these flashcards. And next one. Slap. So the following accurately describes a function of angiotensin 2. I think my blood pressure is going up. Ooh. So the following accurately describes the function of angiotensin 2. So angiotensin 2 increases water. Hold on. Let's read through these. Acts on the pituitary to increase the secretion of aldosterone. Fuck, I can't remember. That might be right. Acts on smooth blood cells lining blood vessels, decreasing resistance to blood flow. Okay, it's definitely not B because it increases resistance to blood flow, I'm pretty sure. Acts on nephrons to increase water retention in the blood. Crap. Alright, acts on adrenal glands to increase secretion of ADH. I don't really know this one. Alright, so you have angiotensinogen, which is released by the liver cells, gets cleaved by something to make it into angiotensin 1, and then gets cleaved again to turn into angiotensin 2. I'm just trying to remember. Acts on the adrenal glands to increase secretion of ADH. Man, that sounds so good. I like that. Acts on pituitary. Angiotensin. I like this. Let's think about what would happen. ADH. Oh crap, which one increases osmolarity and volume? I think that was ADH. I don't think that helps me, that information. Acts on the pituitary to increase secretion of aldosterone. Okay, it might be the pituitary one because I remember angiotensin being drawn. Come on, I just don't remember. I'm gonna get this one wrong. It's either A or D, I think. I'll just go with A. Oh, fuck, D. Oh, shit, they're both wrong. Decreasing resistance to blood flow. Wait, angiotensin. I thought it's like angio, veins, like angio, like vein pressure, and tensin, like the tensing of the veins. Why would it decrease? Why would it be B? Okay. I don't remember that. Acts on nephrons to increase water retention in the blood. What the? Let me just embed this in my mind. Oh, the whole thing is a nephron. Okay, I didn't remember that. That's definitely a wrong one. Nephrons to So angiotensin 2 is part of the renin-angiotensin aldosterone axis, which is activated in response to low blood pressure. Decreasing resistance to blood flow decreases blood pressure. The pituitary secretes ADH. The adrenal glands secrete aldosterone. Angiotensin 2 acts on nephrons to increase water retention in the blood. See, I forgot the mechanism, though. If I remembered how it worked, I could remember that it increased water retention in the nephron. In the blood in the nephron. Damn. Alright. Savage. Alright. Macula densa cells are in what part of the nephron? They are in the... they're in the distal convoluted tubule. No, wait. Macula densa. Shit, hold on. Macula densa. Yeah, that makes sense. Macula densa, distal convoluted tubule. I actually wasn't sure about that. What are they messaging in Discord? I play DPS then. Alright. Distal convoluted tubule. And next question. Juxtaglomerular cells are part of which structure in the nephron? Oh, thanks, malware bites. They are in the juxtaglomerular cells. They are in the... I think they're in the afferent. Let's say afferent. Oh, fuck. Juxtaglomerular cells. Either afferent or proximal, right? Oh, I'm gonna feel bad when I get this one wrong. Oh my god, I got lucky. Alright, let's see. Let's read this. Juxtaglomerular cells release renin into the bloodstream. Juxtaglomerular cells respond to short-range prostaglandin secretion from the macula densa cells, which line the distal proximal tubule. They missed a T. Juxtaglomerular cells line afferent arterioles. Alright, dope. Dopey dope. Kind of remember that image in my head. Ah, this seems like a difficult question. Angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1 in the presence of renin. As compared to a reaction carried out with renin not present, control is most likely to produce which of the following experimental observations? I believe renin. I don't know if it's renin. I think renin might convert angiotensinogen. Wait. Let me think. Angiotensin to angiotensin 1 causes water to come in. Is that right? Ugh. And that's like the opposite of renin. Renin increases blood pressure by increasing. Man, this is a lot to remember. Forgetting. Let's say a statistically significant increase in both reaction rate. Man, I don't remember. This is like hinges on you remembering that angiotensinogen is activated by renin to become angiotensin 1. Oh, fuck. I don't remember this. This is a hard question. Delta G. What the fuck was delta G? Free energy? So if you have renin... this is a complete guess. I don't remember how it affects the solutes, because I would assume, like, additional solutes increases delta G. Oh, this is decrease. I would say increase. Can't remember solutes. How is renin? It's just volume. Yeah, but the volume is that was lucky. Let's read this. A statistically significant P is less than 0.05 increase in reaction rate. A statistically insignificant P equals 0.08 decrease in delta G. Statistical significance p-value is the probability that an observed difference in means between the treatment group and control group is due to random chance. Renin is an enzyme that catalyzes the conversion of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Right, so the reaction, okay, so that was a guess, I think. I kind of like, it's like 60% kind of knew it, thought it was true. And the latter, I didn't know how it affected delta G at all. So this was, I just guessed right on that second part. Enzymes increase reaction rate but do not alter the thermodynamics of the reaction. Delta G is a thermodynamic quantity. Oh, that's what oh. Okay, that makes sense. I didn't think about that. Okay. That was like interesting. Okay, that was a good question. Very difficult. ACE inhibitors lower blood pressure. How? I'm pretty sure they inhibit renin, because that's why they're called ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme. And they are ACE inhibitors. And renin is the angiotensin converting enzyme. So they inhibit renin, so it's either A or C, just from knowing that, which disrupts the production of angiotensin 1 from, so it's C, because we know that renin converts angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Alright, I fucked up. It must be this one. Inhibit angiotensin converting enzyme, which disrupts the production of angiotensin 2 from it. Yeah, it must be B. I'm retarded. Oh, I meant to take a picture of that. Damn it. I'm gonna have to come back to that one. Put that there. And then put inhibit angiotensin converting enzyme, which disrupts production angiotensin 2 from angiotensin 1. Then I'll have to replace that. Next. And make sure I snap this. Which of the following is least likely to trigger the release of ADH from the posterior pituitary gland? Trigger the release of ADH from the pituitary gland. So ADH will cause increase of water in the veins, which means increase in blood pressure. So it can't be B. Oh, least likely to trigger. Oh, it would be B then. Decrease in blood pressure. Oh, likely to trigger. Least likely to trigger. Oh, a decrease in blood pressure would trigger ADH, because it will increase the blood pressure by increasing the water volume. So yes, so it's not, can't be it. High blood volume. I'm not sure about that. Oh wait, yeah, high blood volume, that means that you're not gonna need ADH if you have high blood volume, I think. Decrease, so let's put C in like a maybe. D, decrease in sodium concentration in glomerular filtrate. Decrease in sodium concentration. Well, what does that do? Decrease in sodium concentration. That... I can't remember what that does. Does that increase or decrease blood volume? Or blood pressure? A decrease in sodium concentration in glomerular filtrate means that there's going to be less water. Decrease in sodium concentration. I think D might be the answer. Angiotensin 2 plasma concentration. I don't remember what that does. Increase in angiotensin 2 plasma concentration. or C. Don't know what A is, and I don't think it's B. So C or D. Oh, man, I'm good at guessing. Alright, I gotta run it back and get that answer to this one. Renin. I'm Renin. This should be... Renin is juxtaglomerular. Yeah. Oops. Maculadenza concentration, synth concentration, sodium ion. Nice high sodium diet. Yeah, prostaglandins. I still haven't remembered that. It's kind of weird. Hormones are blood-borne molecules produced by specific organs that are used to send long-range signals between different organ systems. Neurotransmitters are molecules that send short-range signals between neurons. Prostaglandins are molecules that send short-range signals between cells. Unlike hormones, they are not produced by specific organs, but rather throughout the body. Maculadenza cells send local short-range signals to juxtaglomerular cells for the release of prostaglandins. Okay. Well, just gotta know it. So maculadenza cells detect sodium, then send prostaglandins to the juxtaglomerular cells to signal that they release renin? No. Yeah. Man, that's rough. Renin is not released in response to which of the following? Not released. Low blood pressure. I don't remember this one. My brain's getting tired. I'll have to come back to this. I'm just gonna crank through this, which means I'm just gonna copy these. So I can get to that question, get the right question prompt, and take a break. I'm hungry, actually. Oh, shit. That was the question. Fuck. Alright. That was a mistake. Fucking re. the macula densa. They're the distal macula densa. No. Yeah. Man, how do you remember? That's the afferent. Alright, here we go. Don't fuck it up. Grab that shit. And replace the prompt. Oh, beautiful. Oh shit, I didn't mean to do that. Alright, whatever. I think I could do this. Inhibit ACE, which is a production angiotensin 2. Least likely to trigger the release of ADH. Oh, help me. Decrease in blood pressure, high blood volume, increase. Least likely decreases. Alright, which of the following is least likely to trigger the release of ADH? This is painful. Which of the following is least likely to trigger the release of ADH from the posterior pituitary gland? Oh my god, why is this so hard? Which of the following is least likely to trigger the release of ADH from the posterior pituitary gland? This will do it, so it can't be A. Decrease in sodium concentration. I don't remember. Help. Help. I don't remember how it works. ADH is released in response to low blood pressure. Angiotensin 2 triggers. Release of ADH, high blood volume implies high blood pressure. ADH secretion would intensify this problem. Yes, that's right. Man, just gotta remember two things. ADH increases blood pressure. Well, you gotta remember, whatever. You gotta remember ADH increases blood volume by increasing water, which increases blood pressure in response to low blood pressure. And then high blood volume implies high blood pressure. Jesus Christ. Alright. It's time to take a break. I've been streaming for 3 hours. Fazink, I will see you later, my guy. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next one.